Coming up on Vetline, women veterans watching this are going, duh, yeah, we're trying to tell you guys.
What they're saying here is if you had a miscarriage during service that you later found out was due to an exposure issue, is not rateable.
It's very winnable if you get some firepower behind you, but just the fact that you have to fight in the first place, and they say from the get-go, look, we're not going to acknowledge that these things could in any way be connected, is infuriating.
That the government does things that we don't find out until years and years later that they were somehow bad.
If you are not presently frustrated and wanting to go out with torches and pitchforks to advocate for your sisters in arms who also served selflessly, I don't know what to tell you.
In my humble, honest opinion, I think it's going to take a court case. It's going to be like Agent Orange. It's going to need work its way through the agency and the Board of Veterans Appeals and be continuously denied, and then it's going to have to go up to the Court of Appeals for veterans claims.
Women veterans are often cheated out of benefits that they have earned through their service. In our fledgling young tenure as a show so far, only been around for a few months, I've noticed that in our analytics, about 90% of our viewership thus far are men. So for those of you guys out there, this is something that you should absolutely care about. One, because these are your sisters in arms who fought and served alongside you, that deserve benefits that are owed to them, that were promised to them, so they can, any sort of illness or injury that befell them by virtue of their service. You're also not a sociopath, so you don't just care about things when they happen to you personally. That's two. Hope you're not. And then three would be everybody benefits when the system works as it should for all groups, to include, and in particular, smaller groups, minority groups, and marginalized groups, which are often one and the same. Around the turn of the century, women veterans made up like 5% of the veteran community, pre-turn of the century. But it's been growing steadily as our ranks become more diverse. And they predict, I don't know who they is, the royal they predict that by 2040, nearly 20% of all veterans are going to be women. It's an important group for a lot of reasons. So those are for our guys out there listening, for women out there listening. I don't need to tell you, and I'm obviously not telling you from a place of personal experience, which is why we have a guest today, that this system, military system, the VA system, was originally built for guys. And from what I hear, and from what we're going to talk about today, it hasn't done a spectacular job of integrating fully. There are certain medical concerns, there are certain social concerns, there are issues that female veterans, female service members deal with almost exclusively or at a much, much, much higher rate than male service members and male veterans. And sometimes, often, those certain disparate issues get left in the lurch, left in the dark. So to go into it further, obviously I'm not just going to be a guy explaining female benefits to you. Very special guest today. Monica Irelan Karas has been fighting for veterans benefits. She's a VA accredited attorney who's been fighting for veterans benefits for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. She knows this issue inside and out. So I think it would behoove me to shut my mouth and welcome Monica. Hi, Monica.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so tell me about tell everyone here about your background.
So it's interesting because it kind of ties into what we're talking about today with our female veterans. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He also lived at Camp Lejeune with my mother and my sister. And we know
Camp Lejeune, like drinking water Camp Lejeune.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So we know from everything that's now become sort of public knowledge of what was happening on Camp Lejeune, what was happening with the drinking water. But those of us who were really paying attention to it, and myself being one of them, we've been watching this for probably 20, 25 years before the VA decided to actually take a stab at it and handle it.
So it wasn't news to you when all the drinking water stuff came to light?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when I was in law school, one of my final papers was on all of the chemicals that were in the water at Camp Lejeune and where they came from and how they got there.
How about that? Okay, so this has been your practice area since the word go.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, I only went to law school because I got GI Bill benefits that I hadn't had in undergrad. So I went to law school specifically on a GI Bill. I mean, it didn't make a dent in it, but that's why I went back. And so I went to a school where veterans benefits, they had a clinic. We did work with veterans. So it's been top of mind for me for a really long time.
So I was wondering if we could dive into, the claim that, women veterans are getting cheated out of benefits that they're owed because the system was built for the boys. It was a good old boys club.
Yeah.
Can you expand upon that a little bit? What are, and then we can go into specific conditions, that women need to be aware of and that men should be aware of too. But give us a general overview if you could.
I mean, obviously, all of the female parts that men don't have, right? So we have a rating system that kind of slid in some ratings for women that were not very well thought out. Frankly, upon reading them again this morning, I was like, God, this is almost prejudicial the way that it's written. There's these very few kind of boxes that women fall into, whether it's for reproductive or cancer type situations. And it's really just not well written. The standing rule, right, when you're dealing with VA claims is you have to have a condition now. You had to have an injury or illness in service, and there must be a link between the two. Those are the three things we're always trying to prove in our practice area. The VA has kind of carved out a piece of that for women that is not in their favor.
So am I understanding correctly that, for example, you and I both have a left arm. Male and female, typically you're going to have a left arm. If you have a left arm injury between male and female, this might be a bad example, but the way that left arm injury is written is not in a language that is inclusive or recognizing females. And then the specific things that are things that men don't have are just kind of written as like an afterthought, like not really thoughtfully produced. Is that accurate?
It is. They put kind of like a asterisk at the top that are like, yes, but if this is a menopause issue, if this is a pregnancy issue, if this is a childbirth issue, it's not service connected. Well, we know that exposure causes issues with all of those things. But
did you say pregnancy not service connected? Even if you get pregnant during the service or pregnant afterward, like that's crazy.
So there's a note at the top of the rating schedule, and I'll read it to you. It says natural menopause, primary. I can't say that word. So I'll skip it. Pregnancy and childbirth are not disabilities for ratings purposes. Chronic residuals of medical or surgical complications of pregnancy may be disabilities for rating purposes. What they're saying here is if you had a miscarriage during service that you later found out was due to an exposure issue, is not rateable. I mean, I've won those. I think they're winnable. I think the people working within the system realize that that's not realistic, but that is the way that the statute is written.
That is wild. I cannot wrap my brain around that. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, and was, post-Korean War, was spraying Agent Orange out of a backpack, basically, a little paper mask. They had actually had a baby when they were stationed in Germany afterwards that didn't make it, like clear Agent Orange, like no doubter. And so what you're telling me is that unless somebody went to somebody like you and got a lawyer to fight for them, like that's not inherently rateable.
Yeah, and Agent Orange is an incredibly interesting thing because they haven't revisited the effects on the child, specifically the child,
Mm-hmm.
who was being born by the woman who was not in service. The man was in
Sure.
service.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're saying, they've said all along that spina bifida is the only thing that can be related to that. And they haven't changed that in years. Nobody's taken a second look at that in years.
It's wild. I didn't know that. And so like women veterans watching this are going, duh. Yeah, we're trying to tell you guys. And guys watching, if your blood isn't boiling over this, just wait. We've got more. It should be boiling over this because that's wild. What are some specific conditions? Like let's go down the list. What are some areas where women service members and female veterans are in particular, outside of obviously that the pregnancy issue is huge? Because I recently learned that they sprayed Agent Orange on bases to do like weeding and stuff. So like that's obviously it's more than
that. They still deny that.
Crazy.
We're not getting very far on that right now.
So beyond the pregnancy, like what let's start with the list of things and see if we can not like rage flip our desks over.
Let's talk about cancer.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we don't know a lot. We know that we do things, that the government does things that we don't find out until years and years later that they were somehow bad. Agent Orange being a great example, burn pits being a great example as
Asbestos.
well. Asbestos, yes. So think about that in terms of if you were a woman and were exposed to a burn pit and then, you became pregnant or you were pregnant during that exposure and then, perhaps lost a baby, perhaps had some sort of uterine issue that turned out to be cancer, because as we know, cancer doesn't just usually present itself as cancer. It is the way your cells are affected when something bad is happening. It's shaking up your cells, right?
It doesn't happen right away either. It's not like you get a exposure to somebody who has the flu or something, and a few days later you're full blown. Yeah.
Right. We know that we don't know what all these chemicals cause. We know that we don't know what levels of exposure cause what. We have women that are getting breast cancer, uterine cancer, cancer of the ovaries, things like that, or even perhaps not cancerous, endometriosis, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And VA is saying, based on the way their rating schedule is set up, that it cannot be service connected unless you had some kind of medical treatment and the medical treatment went awry and you're doing it secondary to that. It's really not written in favor of women whatsoever.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around that. So like my dad, for example, Agent Orange exposure, let's say I believe either prostate or testicular cancer is very commonly like a presumptive association with Agent Orange exposure. So you're telling me that females don't have the same sort of presumptive connections at all? Like if someone's serving and drinking water at Camp Lejeune and ends up with ovarian cancer or something that is linked, you're telling me that is not going to be automatically, that's not going to be considered unless somebody gets a lawyer?
So Camp Lejeune is sort of its own beast, right?
Kind of separate. Now, okay.
I can tell you that I can overcome this all day. I can overcome that note in the ratings that are like, oh, by the way, we're not going to cover this.
You're saying you as a lawyer who's going to fight for people.
Yes.
This is something you do all the time.
People can too. You certainly can fight for it, but it just kind of is mind blowing to me that this note is even on there. If you were in service and you were on active duty and you got in a car accident, or maybe you were in the wrestling club or whatever the case may be, and you threw out your shoulder, there's nobody waving their hands going, hey, wait, this is not going to be service connected when you're done.
Right.
Just
right.
So you know. I mean, we've done a ton of those cases where it's like a basketball or football injury from when someone was active duty, or like the drunken bar fights for crying out loud. Those get service connected if you are active duty. It's crazy. No,
so it's not that it's unwinnable. It's very winnable if you get some firepower behind you. But just the fact that you have to fight in the first place, and they say from the get-go, look, we're not going to acknowledge that these things could in any way be connected, is infuriating.
Taking a quick 20-second break in the action to talk to you about our incredible sponsors, Tayback Law. The best in the business, the most reliable when it comes to VA disability claims and appeals. They've personally helped me. I am a client, and I highly recommend that if you need some support with your VA disability claims, that you check them out. Brand new website at taybachattorneys.com. Back to it.
And the other thing of it is the ratings are not very high. If you think about a woman who perhaps had to have her ovaries and her uterus removed and can't bear children anymore, that drops down to a 50% rating after the 100%. So 100% you get during treatment. After treatment, when it's all done, you drop down to a 50% rating. So it's a 50% rating for the rest of your life if you've never been able to have a child. There's also a special monthly compensation attached to certain pieces of this, but it's only $138 extra a month. I mean, I don't know that you can put a price tag on it, but this doesn't feel like a great price tag, right?
But if you could put a price tag on it, it'd probably be a little higher than that.
Right.
So do you think this comes from old laws? Is this a remnant of, 50 plus years ago of VA policy? Or do we have an issue right now with our current, not necessarily our current administration, but our modern administrations, leading the VA and leading our government? Like, we have an issue with that across the board.
I don't know the history of the statutory language, and I don't know when it kind of got put into play. I think it certainly would be worth a second look right now. But I think as we deal with the really big things, right, this just gets kind of scuttled to the side. And not to say that these are not very big things, but when you look at the population, compared to the male population, this is not what people are marching on Capitol Hill for right now. This is not what people are like, hey, we need your attention on this right now. There's not enough firepower behind it to make anybody really care. And, like anything in life, nobody cares until it happens to you.
And it shouldn't be that way, because we're not all sociopaths and all both rise together. And, I'm angry for you and your community at the injustice of all of this. And I'm glad that there are people like you that are out there fighting for people to make sure they get the benefits they deserve. I want to segue from illnesses to military sexual trauma, which is obviously, I would assume, is overwhelmingly claimed and rated for female service members, but not exclusively.
No, that is actually not correct. Most of our military sexual trauma is male on male. And we're seeing some really old claims.
Really?
Yes. And that is not what anybody in the government thought was going to happen when they kind of liberalized the rules on military.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
I don't know an exact percentage, but I would say from my practice, I would say 75 to 80% of military sexual trauma is male on male.
Wow. So that's like not just like a number of cases, which you would assume would be higher because the male population is so much higher, but like as a percentage of cases?
Yes, that I have done.
Wow.
Yes. I will say that a lot of those are older cases. So as you know, when you deal with mental health, when you deal with sexual trauma and things like that, those are things that records just don't really exist on. They're things that people may not remember the details of until later in life. So there are a lot of those that came up in the 60s and 70s that we're just seeing now.
I personally know 3 people who have experienced horrible military sexual trauma when they served and are unable to get any sort of rating or even recognition from the VA.
Yeah.
Why is that such an issue? Is it just overarchingly military sexual trauma is difficult to rate?
It is difficult to rate.
Okay.
Hopefully hopefully. There are not ongoing physical traumas that happen from those things. So they can be a little bit hard to prove. There's a lot of people who are not going to make a complaint against a higher up. There's a lot of people that don't want to derail someone else's career because of this. There's a lot of things that come into play. The one thing that I found very interesting when doing these sexual trauma cases is, if you remember from the Epstein files recently, we've got all of these victims coming out saying, you didn't redact my name, you were supposed to redact my name, and now everybody knows what happened to me, and I've been trying to do without this my whole life, without being the limelight for this. On a smaller scale, within the military, if you make a report on this against someone and you decide not to prosecute, which is very often, I've only actually had one case that went through and prosecuted the perpetrator. The perpetrator's name is redacted from the record, but the victim is not. So you can get your hands on those by a FOIA request. And the person who was assaulted or attacked, you can very well get their information. It's an old system. Nobody's looked at it in a long time. It seems like we're going a little bit backwards with some of the things we do in the military right now as far as implementing some of the older rules once again. So I don't think that this is anything that's on their radar.
So you think we're leaning more like the issue has been that the VA system has been built for the good old boys club, and kind of currently as things ebb and flow, we're kind of the pendulum swinging back towards the good old boys club sort of thing.
Yeah, it is. It really is. When you talk about things like sexual trauma or PTSD or maybe some mental health stuff, it's very interesting the way the state of the world will have an effect on those things. So for instance, we had, and for a long time they weren't fightable, but they became very winnable cases around the time of the Civil Rights Movement. We saw a lot of prejudice against African Americans that we are now, just in 2026, prosecuting and going after and trying to get some sort of something for these people, because it did affect the rest of their lives, and they do possibly have mental health issues or, God forbid, a military sexual trauma. We don't see these things come back around from what was actually happening in society at the time for years.
I know this is a big question, but what's a solution? How do we get this to be a priority?
It's hard to peg anything down with the VA, and the medical stuff is difficult. We've seen over the past, I don't know if it's 10 years, 5 years now, that they're outsourcing all of our comp and pen exams. They want to outsource even more. I don't believe they're going to be outsourcing, the writing of our statutes anytime soon. But the more people don't have boots on the ground with a voice on this, the harder it's actually going to become. It's going to take a large movement or undertaking to get this corrected.
Is it going to take a movement from a nonprofit, from an NGO, from a VSO? I mean, you see the American Legion in pictures of the guys with the hats, American Legion VFW, all sitting in a row in a hearing with the microphones on, advocating for veterans like all the time. Are they just advocating for the guys? Are they not focused on this issue the way that they should?
It's funny you say that, because I have a number of friends that do that are on those committees, and I just want to take this opportunity to apologize for making fun of your hats.
I'm a member of my local American Legion and VFW. Okay. I've got the hat somewhere.
Okay, so I'm apologizing to you personally as well.
Yeah, I wasn't making fun of the hats. I got one somewhere.
In my humble, honest opinion, I think it's going to take a court case. It's going to be like Agent Orange. It's going to work its way through the agency and the Board of Veterans Appeals and be continuously denied. And then it's going to have to go up to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. And I really think that would be at least the start, if not the start and the end, of getting some attention on how antiquated these statutes are and the way in which they're written.
And if it went all the way up there, would that then create precedent that would kind of lead to some change. Okay. I have one final big question for you here. Let's say I'm a female veteran and I did like everybody does in TAPS now, which I think is great. In the transition assistance program, they get everybody to start filing their VA benefits on their way out the door. Let's say I have filed my stuff and I believe that, even though this is a female specific issue, there's obviously a service connection here. It gets denied and I say, fine, whatever, I'm out.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay. First off, don't do that. What do I do next?
If you take anything away from this conversation, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, continuously appeal those. You have a year to appeal every decision that you get from the agency. Just appeal it. If you have any new information, material information is what they're looking for. Put in new medical records. If you read an article that supports your claim, put that in, but just keep appealing it, because what happens, and this is the majority of our clients are saying, I started this in 2003 and now I've been fighting this whole time. And now you're telling me I'm only getting 2 years worth of back pay. That's because at some point in the line, somebody went, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I can't, I don't want to, I'm not appealing it. And then they start
they crossed a year threshold. And so anything else would have been starting fresh.
Yes.
Also, I guess an option is people can come to somebody like you, and accredited. Accredited, very important. Someone who is accredited to help out, a legal professional. When should someone talk to somebody like you? It's
never too early. It's never too late, right? If you are just starting the process and you don't know what you're doing, we're happy to help there. If you've been fighting it for years and you're getting exhausted, we're happy to help there. We will help at any stage in the claim. Now, if you're just starting and really you just need help with your paperwork, the local VSO, the DAV, those guys are great to help you with the initial paperwork. It's just when we, especially in the things that we're talking about today, you really want someone who knows what they're talking about. And that's not to say that the VSOs don't, but we're getting into some hairy kind of legal questions.
Yeah, you need a little more firepower.
Yeah, you do. And maybe we need to get a medical opinion. Maybe we need to go through your comp and pens with a medical doctor. Those are the kinds of things that we can do.
That a law firm would do that a VSO can't or won't do.
I don't think it's anything that they're wiping their hands clean of. It's an issue of volume and it's an issue of legal knowledge.
No hate whatsoever to the VSOs.
No hate to the VSOs. We love our VSOs.
Absolutely. I mean, my initial claim was through Texas Vet Commission, a VSO down in San Antonio, and they did a great job.
Good.
But then it came to a point where my appeals were hitting a brick wall. And that's when I personally became a client of Tayback Law, which is how we all met in the first place. I appreciate what you do, Monica. Is there anything that I missed out on that you wanted to make sure that we touched on today as it pertains to women fighting for the benefits that they earn?
I just want to go back to the Camp Lejeune thing really quick.
Yeah. And so for people that don't know, Camp Lejeune, bad drinking water, on base, lots of people very sick, long-term issues, and the military or the VA just recently, within the last decade or so, recognized, I believe it was within the last decade, recognized kind of a presumptive connection between these issues and that drinking water.
So the thing about Camp Lejeune that's different than everything else we do is that women and children were affected because they were living there with their spouses. That's not to say
if their husbands served.
Yes. That's not to say that there obviously weren't women directly affected from their service, but because they weren't veterans, we had to fight really hard for a long time because one of the first things I talked about, those 3 things you need for service connection, we have to be a veteran to get any of those. There's actually on Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, to my knowledge, there's actually just cemeteries of small children from
Wow.
decades and decades ago because the water contamination was just, so the water contamination caused a lot of very specific female injuries. The PACT Act passed in 2022. You had 2 years to file that claim if you weren't a veteran, and then that claim period closed. So now we're at 2026. The claim period closed in 2024. 0.05% of all of those claims have been processed. So just if you're sitting
Whoa.
waiting on that, nothing is happening. But just
That
know
sucks.
that if you put your paperwork in and you haven't heard, you're not alone. Nobody's heard.
That sucks. That's awful. So are you saying that, let's say I served, I'm stationed at Camp Lejeune, I'm living on base, I'm married, my wife and our kids also live on base, they get sick, do they have a legal avenue or resource? Or recourse, rather?
They did, but only for
They did,
that
but they don't
2-year
anymore.
period. So as of 2024, that closed up. So
Goodness.
at this point, there's no recourse if you didn't file something within those 2 years. There's just no recourse unless you are a veteran. If you're a veteran and that all these female issues that we were talking about, we will go after 100% that is from the water contamination if that's what we believe happened.
What if I served, I missed the window, my wife and kids all got sick, and caring for them has taken a toll on me physically and mentally? Do I have a claim? Can my family at least get some sort of compensation? Can I, I'm a caregiver now for my family who have suffered greatly as a result of this. My mental health has suffered as a result of the injustice. Is that claimable?
That's a very interesting question. I have never come up against that. I would certainly take that case and try.
Sure. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I may have found something there. Monica, I sure appreciate everything that you do, helping veterans get what they earned, especially your advocacy for women veterans. If you are not presently frustrated and wanting to go out with torches and pitchforks to advocate for your sisters in arms who also served selflessly, I don't know what to tell you, but I will get the pitchforks and the torches and I will meet you out in the parking lot and we are going to go raise some hell. So with that, we will adjourn and hope for better days for our brothers and sisters in arms.